Pulawanaka and welcome to For the Record. I'm Edwin Nand, your host for tonight, sitting in for Pedeli Rokotoivuna. Now, as we get closer to elections and we continue to speak with leaders of political parties, tonight in studio we have with us the leader of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Felix Anthony. We will be speaking to him for the next 1 hour. On our panel tonight, to speak with Mr. Anthony, we have Nemani Ndelambatiki from the Fiji Sun, the manager training at the Fiji Sun. And we are also joined by Mika Longa. He's no stranger to us. He is currently employed at Fiji TV as a senior reporter. He's also worked with FBC News. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here. Mr. Anthony, thank you for joining us. We'll get right into it. Leading up to the elections, you've been going around the country, campaigning and meeting, holding rallies. What sort of reaction are you seeing from people to the PDP, which is fairly new? You are one of the newest parties in this election.
Yes, it's been an interesting time for the PDP. We are very encouraged by the response that we have received so far around the country. Of course, as you know, the PDP was founded on the principles of multiculturalism and, of course, for the underprivileged, for the workers, the common man and woman of this country. So the response has been very positive. Also, what we have seen is that the people do want something new this elections. And the PDP is providing that fresh start to the country in terms of moving forward. And one of the things that we find also is that the people know little of what's happened over the last 7.5 years in this country. And quite often we are told by people that they had no knowledge of what has been happening in this country. So this campaign is somewhat different from the previous campaigns. It has to be a bit of education and also a campaign on party manifesto. So we are attempting to do both. And of course, we don't blame people for not knowing what's been happening for the last 7.5 years in this country. And that's simply because of the media controls that we've had in the country during this period. But nevertheless, it's been an interesting campaign so far.
Does the PDP rely on your union background, your years as a general secretary and being a union man, which you have said yourself? Do you rely on that to take you to the polls come September 17th?
Well, not entirely. Not entirely. I have been in the trade union movement for some 32 years now, and for me, it's normal duty to be serving the people of the country, to serve the workers of this country. So when we go around this time around, it's no different. It's still about the workers of the country and all our workers in the country, whether they form informal employment or informal employment. And of course, the needs of the people are the same. So my struggle, as far as I call it, continues in the political field, and the ultimate goal, of course, is to see how we can uplift the standard of living of our people, and particularly those at the bottom of the ladder.
Yep, sure. You talked about voters not being sort of well informed of what has happened in the last 7 years. You know, you had an illustrious career in trade unionism, and you've been a champion of workers' rights, of the poor, you know, the downtrodden. Shortly after 2006, after the takeover, you and other members, you were then a member of the Fiji Labour Party. You and other members, including the leader of the Labour Party, Mahendra Chaudhry, you decided to join the Bainimarama administration at that time. It came as a shock to people who've always followed your course. Why did you do it?
Well, let me first of all, thank you, Nemani, for that question. Let me first of all say that I at no time joined the Bainimarama government. I was not a government minister of any sort in the government. I was appointed a member of the Fiji National Provident Fund. And I think it's important for people to understand that from its inception, the Fiji National Provident Fund had a tripartite board which comprised of the workers' representatives, the employers' representatives, and government representatives, 2 of each. And the FNPF Act actually stipulated that. The only brief period when this did not happen was during the Garase government, where the then government actually decided it was going to appoint representatives of workers and employers on their own, without consulting the peak workers' organization or the employers' organization. So we in the FTUC were represented at the FNPF level from the inception of FNPF. And we continue to demand that workers' representatives be on the board. So that was a decision that was taken purely in the interest of workers in this country. It wasn't a political decision that we took.
Mr. Anthony, you served on a number of boards, subcommittees, while you were on the FNPF board. Is it true that you made something around $160,000 while serving on these subcommittees and on the FNPF board?
Well, I don't recall the exact amounts made. I don't accept the word that you say we made. $700 or $160,000. I think when you serve on boards, there are certain fees that are payable to board members, and we were paid exactly what board members all the time were being paid.
How much? Do you think?
There was not anything exceptional about that, and these payments were quite normal, and they still continue today.
Well, you were not there. You were there. You know, you were not there for too long. You came in and then you went out again. Did you quit on your own volition, or were you
asked to leave?
Asked to leave?
No, we were asked to leave because there were certain disagreements in regards to the functioning of the FNPF, and more particularly FNPF funding the government deficits, budget deficits, which we were totally against. And we made sure that FNPF was not going to be used as the government's bank entirely. So we took a position on that, and in fact it's not only me but the entire board was asked to leave and was replaced by 6 government representatives on the board, and that is there till today.
Mika, you have a question? Yeah, sure. Just membership of the board, eh? So you maintain that you were there as a representative of the union, despite the fact that you were put into the board by the government, and you were expected to carry out what the government had planned for the FNPF.
No, that is certainly not true. The government does not plan for FNPF. The whole responsibility of the functioning of the FNPF rests with the board of FNPF and not the government. And the government was and should not be in any way dictating to the board as to what it should do and how it should operate.
But except they make the policies.
No, they don't make the policies. The board makes policies for FNPF. The ultimate responsibility of the function of the board of the FNPF rests with the board of FNPF and not the government. It is not a government department. Let's make this clear. Unlike now, where it behaves like a government department, at that time we did not allow government to dictate to the board how we should run.
Mr. Anthony, there's a lot of talk about the fees that were collected by the board members then. There's talk that you collected something around $160,000. Can you clear the air for once and for all? How much did you get while you were on these subcommittees and on the board?
I was paid what every board member was being paid. I was not paid any extra. I can't confirm to you a figure, but the payments, as I've said, were normal payments that every board member receives. And that is quite normal. That is still the case today. So when you talk about 160, now you must understand this was over a period of like 2.5 years. Yeah, it wasn't like 160 over a period of a month. So
you were a workers representative.
Do you regret getting into the FNPF board?
Not at all. Not at all. I believe that today the workers' rep must still be on the board of FNPF. And let me make one thing clear. One of the things that we fought for in FNPF was to retain the pension scheme for our workers. Now, soon after we left, this pension scheme was reviewed and reduced from 15 to around 8%. Now, the very people who accused us of sitting on the board questioned why there weren't workers' reps on the board. And we say, yes, there is absolutely a need for workers' reps to be on the FNPF board. And I subscribe to that even today. I believe there ought to be a tripartite board of FNPF. I believe that workers' reps should be represented. And I also believe that FTUC, being the most representative of the workers' organizations, must be represented on the FNPF board.
When you left, after you left, the FNPF went through a number of reforms. As a result, today, the FNPF is in a very strong position, for the future, because they've gone through the reforms. Do you agree with that?
I need a quick answer. We're about to go to break. I need a quick answer.
Well, FNPF may be in a strong position, but the people aren't. The people who were to receive pensions and are receiving pensions are now subjected to poverty level standard of living. And more particularly when we recognize that majority of the workers of this country are wage earners who don't have much savings in FNPF. So the current pension scheme that FNPF offers does not secure them a good future.
All right, Mr. Anthony, thank you. With that, we'll go to a quick break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to For the Record. Tonight we are speaking with the leader of the People's Democratic Party, Felix Anthony, covering a whole host of issues. Now, before we went to the break, we were talking about the FNPF, FTUC's relations with the FNPF board and FTUC and PDP's stand on the FNPF, I understand. Mr. Anthony, one of the issues you brought up was pension payments. Right now, the retirement age is at 55. People qualify for pension at 55. Does the PDP, not necessarily the FTUC, does the PDP believe that the retirement age should be moved to 60?
Well, in principle, we believe there ought not to be a retirement age because that's discrimination based on age. We believe a worker should be allowed to work for as long as he can satisfactorily perform. However, yes, the answer to your question is yes, we believe, and that's in our manifesto, that we need to move the retirement age up to 60.
So people start receiving their pensions from 60?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Mika, you have a question?
Yes, I just have a question, just on that particular issue. Now, you were saying, during your time there, the paper on the new pension scheme never came before your board?
The paper before the new pension scheme did come before the board, and it came a number of times before the board. We had asked management and the consultants at the time to relook at the recommendations that were being made and to basically think outside the box as well. The easiest solution to the pension scheme was to simply reduce the pension payments to the pensioners. And we said that we need to look at other options, such as increasing the retirement age that would have assisted FNPF cash flow, such as increasing contributions of FNPF payments from 8% to maybe 9% and gradually a bit more. So these were some of the areas that we were looking at. And of course, also to explore the possibility of a graduated scheme where people at the lower end of the scale receive a slightly higher percentage pension, and the people at the top bracket receive slightly lower. This is to make sure that we stick true to the FNPF slogan that is securing your future. Now, you're not going to secure people's future by giving them a pension of $2,000 or $3,000 a year. That's in no way any security for people.
There's a lot of discussions to be had. There's a lot of issues to cover. Let's move on. Well,
I'll give you
a quick question. A quick question with a quick answer. Quick question.
I go back to my original question, which sparked this thing about the FNPF. There's something about people, their perception about politicians. when you make a decision to go into FNPF, you make the distinction that it's not government. FNPF is part of, it's under the government. And so when you decide to go in the people's mind, their perception is that you've joined, the government. Obviously, you don't see it that way, but that's the way that people perceive it. And do you think that could affect or has it affected your credibility as a politician? And also, do you think that will affect your chances in this coming election?
No, I don't think that's affected my credibility in any way or my chances in any way, insofar as the workers go or the people go. I just want to correct you, Nemani, on one issue, and that is that the FNPF is not under government. The fact that the Minister for Finance appoints the board does not mean that the FNPF is under the government. It's a workers' superannuation scheme, and it was meant to stand alone without interference of government. But yes, to have the management of the FNPF was entirely at the board's discretion and not government.
All right.
So let's have that clear. Now, if people do have perceptions that the FNPF is under government, well, it is now, without doubt. But at the time when we were there, we said no, FNPF should not be. And if people hold that perception, then that perception is wrong.
All right. Don't you agree that at the end of the day, the government still has, that.
Gentlemen, I'm going to close off this topic. I'm going to close off this
I disagree.
We're going to move on.
Okay.
We're going to move on with discussions. Mr. Anthony, I want a yes or no answer from you. Is there an acting position at the Fiji Trade Union Congress for General Secretary after you left?
Yes.
Why is that?
Well, because that is the process that is normally being followed. For someone to be elected as General Secretary or National Secretary of FTUC, a special delegates conference would have to be convened, and there are constitutional requirements for that to be done. And that has been worked upon, as I am told, and that would be done in the proper manner. It's not like the interim government where we just simply appoint a minister and he becomes minister overnight. No, FTUC is a democratic organization, and that must be understood.
Are you saving that? Are you saving that as a backup if in case the elections don't go your way? Do you intend to go back to the FTUC?
Well, look, what I've said is I'm a union man. I'm a union man, been a union man all my life, and that's what I intend to remain. The only reason I've resigned from FTUC and the trade union movement is because of the decrees that this government has imposed on us, quite unfairly, and they don't apply to the Prime Minister or the Attorney General or his ministers. But for some silly reason, trade unionists are being classified as public servants.
But the opening to going back to continue as a unionist is still open with that acting position. If you lose, you'll go back.
If I lose or if I win, if I had a chance to go back to the trade union movement in any capacity, I would gladly do that. I would gladly do that. Like I said, it's in my blood.
I think the question is, the position is being kept open for you, so that in case you lose the election, you'll go back to that position.
I have absolutely no doubt about me losing or winning the election. I'm going to win this election.
You are up against more than 200
Is that position being reserved for you? Is that position being reserved for you?
No, it's not being reserved for me. It's not being. As I've said, FTUC is a democratic organization, and there is a process and a constitution that will be followed, and that will be done in good time.
Mr. Anthony, you appreciate you are up against more than 200 candidates in these elections, and you were saying for sure to us today that you will win the particular seat that you will be contesting. Right? But how can you be sure of that?
Mika, whenever we take up a fight, we fight to win. We don't fight to lose. And that's what PDP is about.
And you have listed very comprehensive issues that your party is taking in this election campaign, as you mentioned when we started this particular show. And taking up the leadership role for the party, you have basically seen yourself as a right person to lead the party in this charge.
Well, if I did not see myself as the right person, I would not offer myself to be leader of the party. Quite apart from that, I have, as I've said, I've served the workers of this country for 32 years. and serving the people of this country is a normal thing for me. It's not something that I get an itch to do come the elections.
And you believe you have never let them down at any time?
I have never let the workers down of this country at any time.
Mr. Anthony, linked to that, you have gone overseas, you've spoken at a number of international forums, lobbied against the government. Do you see how the repercussions of those could have affected workers, given the sanctions that could have come up? If you had really been working in the best interest of the workers, would you have gone to these international forums, the ILO, for example, the other being the, I understand, the Forest Stewardship Council certification with regards to Fiji pine, and lobbied for decertification, which would have in the end hurt the workers?
I think we need to get a few things right here. One is that we've never lobbied for sanctions against Fiji. Yes, we have raised concerns regarding the violation of workers' rights in the country, which is a legitimate issue that any workers' organization around the world should raise and must raise. That's important. On the forest certification, again, all we sought to do was the government to abide by the obligations to respect workers' rights in this country. And that's exactly what we have called to do. The International Labour Organization, as you know, Fiji is a member of the ILO, and being a member of the International Labour Organization, Fiji has certain obligations. One of those obligations is to ensure that the Fijian government respects fully core ILO conventions. That includes the right to collective bargaining, freedom of association, and there are other conventions as well. But in this case, Fiji has violated these rights, and these have been publicized in many reports of the ILO by the experts of the ILO. These are legitimate issues. I believe it is really for this government to answer why they have violated these workers' rights in this country.
We can come to that later, Mr. Anthony. Yeah. We'll come to that later. The other issue I raised was the Forest Stewardship Council certification. This is a certification that Fiji pine needs in order to export its wood chips to Japan. Right now prices are high, workers are maintaining their jobs. If Fiji were to lose this certification, we would not be able to export wood chips to Japan. If that were to happen, Fiji pine would lose money and would consequently have to lay off workers. Did you lobby for Fiji pine to lose this stewardship, this certification? Did you? Well, yes or no? Yes or no?
No, the answer isn't as simple as yes or no here. The answer isn't as simple as yes or no. As I've said, we never lobbied for the decertification. First. Number two is that if Fiji pine lost, it would lose because government decided to impose decrees that placed the timber industry under the Essential Industries Decree, which actually took away workers' rights absolutely, without any question at all. No rights whatsoever for the workers in the timber industry. So if Fiji pine was to lose that certification, it would be a result of the actions of government and not Felix Anthony or the trade union movement. But understand that.
At the end of the day, workers would lose their job.
Well, that's for government.
If you can't export your commodity, if you can't make money, then you obviously have to lay off people if you can't afford to pay them.
Can't government understand that if they violate these fundamental rights of workers, that they put at risk the jobs of workers, put at risk the industry?
The workers still have their...
The government has that responsibility, not the trade unions.
As we speak today, workers still have their jobs.
They don't have their rights.
Do you still...
And that's an obligation. That's an obligation that this Fijian government is signed to the international community by the fact that they've joined ILO, the fact that they've participated in the certification process. They've made a commitment to respect workers' rights. And we're saying, hang on. These guys have made a commitment, but they're not respecting that. And that is the responsible thing for any trade union movement to do. If a trade union movement in any country cannot speak up for the workers and their rights and point out the violations, they're not worth having.
Do you still, unions still deserve a place in the country?
Definitely. What? Definitely. Unions are an integral part of any country in this regard. It is the workers, remember, it is also the workers that create the wealth in this country. It doesn't happen by a switch on the wall.
All right.
Thank
you, gentlemen. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you. It's time for another break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to For the Record. We're having some exciting discussions with the leader of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Felix Anthony. Now, let's get the third segment started. And Nemani, you want to have the first question?
Mr. Anthony, you have a very comprehensive manifesto for this coming election. You talk about multiculturalism. How do you differentiate that with equal citizenry? That's my first question, and after you answer this question, I'll ask the subsidiary question.
Well, we do not differentiate between the two.
What's the difference?
The difference is that we believe Fiji needs to be a multicultural, multiracial society where we embrace one another, people from different backgrounds, and that we join hands to move the country forward together. On equal citizenry, we say that everyone is equal in this country before the law and must enjoy equal rights and privileges as government provides.
Okay. In your manifesto it says the issue of a common name for all citizens of Fiji shall undergo wide consultations with the people. Does that mean that you don't agree with the common name that we now have as Fijian for everybody?
No, that does not mean that. What it means is that this is an important issue, and in our campaign we have noted the different point of views from different races in the country, and we believe that this is an important issue. There must be ownership of the name embraced by all the people of this country. It cannot simply be imposed as it has been done now. We say there ought to be an open debate on this issue, pros and cons considered, and that a common name must be widely accepted.
Personally, what do you believe Fijian as the common name is acceptable? Personally?
Well, personally it is, but I believe this issue goes beyond a personal view or my personal view. It must the name must be embraced by the people of this country, and most of the people of this country. And what we believe is that the decent and the right thing to do for any government is to ensure that there is fair consultation with the people on this issue, that the people understand what the implications are, if any, should there be a common name. I mean, we had a common name before, which was agreed by all political parties in the 1997 Constitution, where everyone was called a Fiji Islander, right? But because there was consultation, because there was agreement by all parties, there was no debate or no disagreement or any form of disagreement. But this time around, it's been imposed on the people, and we say that we need to give people a chance to speak. And not only speak, but also be heard.
Yeah, most of the political parties support this. Most of the political parties support it.
Well, that does not mean the PDP will. The PDP stands alone. PDP stands alone as a party. We don't say it's right or wrong. We say we want a debate on the issue. It's as simple as that.
You said you're getting mixed views on the common identity.
Yes.
What do you mean mixed views? Can you specify what the people are saying when you go out to campaign? What are they telling you?
Well, some people disagree with that. Some people want to retain their identity from their origins. There are others who have questions on the implications of everyone being called a Fijian. So there is agreement and disagreement on all sides. And that's why we have made sure that we want a debate. Now, I want to make one thing clear. This manifesto that we've written here is a result of consultations with the people. It wasn't as if we sat in a room and simply wrote the Constitution and said, this is what we think is best for the people. We've let the people tell us what is best for them, and we've put it down in this Constitution, in this manifesto.
Mixed views and reactions from people. The numbers, are they good enough big numbers that could convince
Well,
this? The other supporters of other parties are agreeing to it.
The concerns were substantial, which is why we've addressed this issue in the manifesto. Yeah.
All right. A lot of comments or misconceptions or perceptions with regards to equal citizenry and common identity, you would be aware, is because there are certain politicians who are going out and they're telling potential voters, you will lose your identity, you will lose your rights, you will lose the essence of who you are, and that is why a common identity, equal citizenry, all these issues that are being brought up are not good for the country. Do you agree that that is happening? There is misinformation being spread among voters with regards to equal citizenry and a common identity. Do you agree?
Well, let me put it this way. I don't know whether you would call it misinformation. I would call it there are different views, even amongst politicians in this country. And that is very, very obvious. And yes, there are concerns. There are serious concerns, and some of them are quite legitimate, let me say. Where people talk about land issues. Is this going to have any implications on land ownership? Is this going to have any implications on my rights as an indigenous person? So these are real issues. So they must be addressed. Yeah, I would not go as far as to say the politicians are solely responsible. But yes, I've noted a few comments that have been made which may not be the best comments to make publicly, and I believe that politicians need to be careful when they talk about sensitive issues like this.
Mr. Anthony, your party wants to restore the Great Council of Chiefs,
yes.
and you said, and the manifesto says, it will assist the GCC to promote indigenous customs and traditions. Now, don't you think the Itoke Affairs is already doing a good job on this?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so. I believe a lot more can be done. If we are wanting to talk about a common name for our people, we must make sure that we do a bit more than what we've been doing about assisting just indigenous people. It's about ensuring that all our people understand the fundamentals of indigenous traditions and customs. Language is an issue in this country as well. What is the common language that we have? One common language. We don't have that. We believe that we need to ensure that if we want one people in this country, we want to build one nation in this country, we need to do that extra bit, other than just leaving it to the Fijian Affairs Board or whatever to promote indigenous customs and traditions. We believe our children need to also understand that. So that is something that's also part of our manifesto as well.
Well, the issue of promoting tradition and culture, why leave it to GCC? Why shouldn't the government and every citizen of Fiji, every Fijian, be responsible for it? It's been said the GCC was unelected, it was undemocratic, and it became political. It was a politicized body, and that is the danger if the GCC were to come back. Well, why doesn't the government mainstream?
You're absolutely right when you say that. Why can't everyone promote indigenous traditions, customs, and language? Absolutely right. That's what the PDP believes in. The GCC is just one vehicle that would assist government in going down that road. Right? And it is not the only vehicle. Government, of course, would have to do its part in terms of capacity building for the GCC, in terms of providing resources for GCC, and making sure that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past. Yes, there is some fear about the GCC becoming a political body, which was used by politicians before. We need to move away from that. We need to move away from that. We are not in any way advocating the same GCC that will have a political role. We are saying that the GCC ought to be promoting traditions and customs. It ought to be assisting government with others like NGOs, the provincial councils, in working with government to see how we can lift the economic well-being of our people, and more particularly those at the bottom of the ladder.
Right. You will welcome back the GCC, but on a limited basis.
Well, I wouldn't call it limited basis. I think we would be extending the role of GCC here, and extending it to get involved in the daily lives of our people as well.
Right.
It should not be a body that meets every 6 months and just, nothing happens. So I think we're actually extending the role of GCC, and we want the role of GCC to be more meaningful. Right?
Right.
And government, a PDP government, would ensure that it would capacity build, provide capacity building for the GCC, provide the right advisors for the GCC, provide resources so it can work with government.
So the previous GCC was a total failure in your estimation?
Well, I think the GCC had its good moments and bad moments. Both.
What were
Would the
bad moments then?
GCC? Would
Well,
the
the bad
GCC
moments were, I believe, when they took on a political role during the military coups that took place in '87 and probably 2000. But the good moments also were that they did promote tradition and culture. And we need to understand that the chiefs are central to the indigenous tradition and culture of our people,
Mr.
our
Anthony.
indigenous people. And we need to make sure that they stay.
Mr. Anthony, would you like to intervene into a body like the GCC if you come into government?
Would the GCC
How-
be subservient to
Yeah, to-
an
Would you like to
elected
intervene?
Would the GCC be subservient to an elected government? Given that the former GCC had powers to elect or appoint the president and the vice president as an autonomous body.
The GCC, we don't believe it should be subservient to anybody, nor should the government be subservient to anybody. The government is the elected body that actually governs the country, not the GCC.
So why would
you see-
why would you want the GCC to come back and stand as and serve the government as what?
To assist for the promotion of tradition and culture, right? 1, 2, to assist the government in promoting the economic well-being of our people, right? And they are the people who are the forgotten ones.
On the other hand, the Ethiopia Affairs is doing that on the ground. They will be the best people to do that for government and not the GCC. They just come, meet, and they go.
Well, why is it? Why is it that the Tokyo Affairs, as you say, has been doing a good job? Why is it that most of our indigenous people are poor people? Do you say that
No, I did
that's
not
a good job?
I didn't say that- I did not say
I
that
say
they
that's
don't-
lousy. That's a bad job that they've done.
All right.
More needs to be done to uplift the lives and standard of living of our people, and that includes the
Mr.
indigenous
Anthony,
people.
Mr. Anthony, it's time for another break. We will continue discussions in a while. Welcome back to For the Record. We're speaking with the PDP leader Felix Anthony towards the discussion right now is with regards to the Great Council of Chiefs. Very quick question, Mr. Anthony. What would you propose, what would the PDP propose to ensure that there is some oversight over the Great Council of Chiefs?
Well, I believe that the GCC should be in a position itself to set some ground rules for itself once it comes into being again. I think I don't believe that really the government should be setting rules for the GCC, but these rules, of course, must focus on, as I've said, the purpose of the GCC, as I've just mentioned. To see how we can obtain results for the people. It's just not setting up the organization. I think it should also be result orientated.
Do you realize that this would be a body of high chiefs who have a lot of power over the Vanua?
Yes, they would have a lot of influence over the Vanua.
Do you think they have failed the Fijian people and the country in the past?
Well, I'm not here to make a judgment on the previous chiefs. As I've said, there were some good moments, some bad moments. I'll leave my comments to that.
If you were to give the option to answer yes or no on that question, what would that
I wouldn't take that option.
Mr. Anthony, obviously, if you allow the GCC to come back, you will fund it, right?
The government will.
Will fund it. And because of the purse strings, you cannot say that government will have no intervention in what the GCC does. But at the end of the day, the government is still accountable for whatever happens with the GCC, right? Now, the other point I want to raise with you, Mr. Anthony, is that how do you reconcile this idea of equal citizenry with the setting up of the GCC. It's a subsidiary question to that is the Constitution guarantees the rights of the indigenous people. You know, it guarantees, you know, their customs, their traditions. And so it's well protected in there. I think what we are debating here today is there a need to have the GCC come back to, you know, in that capacity? So the first question is, how do you reconcile? On one hand, you have equal citizenry, and on the other, you're bringing back GCC. How do you reconcile these two? Because you're focusing on just one particular.
I'll give it to Mr. Anthony to answer that now.
Yeah, well, first on the finance side, yes, the PDP government will finance the GCC. That absolutely no question about that. By financing the GCC would not mean we would in any way be controlling the GCC. Right? And then the PDP government will not do that. Of course, when there's public finances involved, there will be requirement for accountability. But insofar as the work of the GCC goes, the GCC should work independently of government. That's the first answer to your first question. The second, on equal citizenry and the GCC, let me just point out one thing. Let's not confuse the two issues. Indigenous people in any country enjoy special rights, and they do enjoy special consideration by governments. And this is not peculiar to Fiji. This happens everywhere in the world. And as we've said here, there are conventions that actually dictate the rights of indigenous people and how their rights need to be protected. The PDP agrees that the indigenous people have a special place in this country, and that the PDP government will pay special attention to that as well. This includes the issue of rights, traditions, customs, and how we uplift the economic well-being of our indigenous people.
We'll move on to other discussions. Let's close off on the GCC with that. Mr. Anthony, I want to know what the PDP stand is on the equal payment of lease money for Itoke-owned land. Right now, every Itoke landowner, regardless of their chiefly status, and this has nothing to do with the GCC or all the discussions we've had. We're talking about Itoke land ownership. Do you support equal payment of lease money to every Itoke landowner?
I support that the PDP supports that the issue of lease money be left best to the landowners themselves. Should they want equal distribution, we don't have any qualms about that. Should they want to go back to the old system, we have no qualms about that. The fact is that it is their land, it is their choice how they should receive payment for the lease of their lands. And in our manifesto, we are saying we will leave that choice to the landowners.
You will call a meeting of Itoke representatives comprising of Rokotuis, of chiefs. Who else? Who's going to decide? Who's going to decide?
The landowning unit will decide.
The landowners,
whoever needs to be involved in that will be involved, and they would make a decision which a PDP government would respect.
Have you ever heard of any Itoke landowners going against his or her chief in a public forum, speaking against their chief?
Well, I don't know what you're trying to get at here.
I'm asking if there were to be such discussion, consultations, if a chief says we are not going to have equal distribution, the chiefs get a bigger share and the landowners get a smaller share, do you believe Itoke landowners will oppose that in a public forum? And panelists, I welcome your views on this. Do Itoke landowners, everyday landowners, have the ability to stand up to their chiefs?
Well, places I've been to in the country, the members of the Matangali, they welcome, this thing. They've never had that kind of money before, but now they feel included because they're now getting a fair share of the the land rent. So
We don't have any disagreement with that. Absolutely not. If they're happy with it, go for it.
If you
yeah,
leave
we're not going to forcefully change that. No, we won't. What we're saying is that if they're happy with what's going on now, we're happy.
Because what had happened in the past was that the concentration of the of the money that comes from the land rent goes to the chiefs. Now it's been distributed evenly, and I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to find out whether the members of the Matagali would like it. Of course, they like it. I mean, they've got more money in their hands than they've ever had before.
We have no problems with that, like I said. We're not contradicting that. What we're saying is if they like it, that's fine.
But do you think that will have an impact on how the Tokais in the respective villages or Vanua setting affect the way of living? The Vanuas are known for respect for each other, respect for elders, respect for chiefs. Having equal distribution of these monies amongst the people, do you think that would have an impact on those issues?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so, because if it did, we have not seen any impact with the new system here that you currently have. I don't think anyone at the moment considers it disrespectful that they receive money instead of the chief does. Right? So we haven't seen that at all. So I don't see if there was going to be, if a land owning unit were to take an alternative option, that would have seen anything like that as well.
Just to add to what you're saying, Mr. Anthony, by the same token, things have carried on as normal with the lives of the people. Same with the GCC. There's been no GCC for the last 7 years. And life has carried on as normal among the Tokay. So you're trying to bring it back when people are carrying on with their lives.
I disagree with you, Nemani. I totally disagree with you. When you say life is carrying on as normal, we're under a dictatorship today. People can't speak their mind. Right? And people have not been allowed to speak their mind, nor have people been consulted, nor have they been heard by this government. So therefore, to say that life goes as normal, no, that is not true.
I think you're generalizing there.
We have consulted people, and the GCC is a important issue for indigenous people.
We've discovered,
and majority of the people, indigenous people of this country, want the GCC back.
Mr. Anthony, we've talked about the GCC quite at length. We're talking about indigenous land and land rent money. Mika, I understand you have a question.
Yes. Just the same issue. Land bank. You have the TLTB on this end, and then land bank comes on the other end. What do you think of this concept?
Well, the concept is not a bad one, right? I don't say I agree with it. It's not a bad one, but I believe that there are some serious concerns amongst the landowners in regards to land bank. And more particularly, the powers that have been given to just one person as Minister for Lands to decide what is the best for the landowners in this country. We believe that there needs to be greater consultation with the landowners in this regard, and that is, I think, one of the more important concerns that the landowners have highlighted to us, that they are being left totally out of any decision making in terms of how the land is leased and how it would be managed, and whether it would be this generation or the next generation that would see the land back.
Do you agree that landowners are to be given the choice?
We'll take that after the break.
Yes.
We'll go to a quick break, and more discussions coming up soon. Welcome back. This is the last segment for tonight's show of For the Record. We've had some very enlightening discussions with the leader of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Felix Anthony. Mr. Anthony, as we wrap up the show, let's look to the future in terms of elections and parliament and different political parties having to work in a House of Parliament. After 8 years, mind you, do you see the PDP being able to work with Fiji First?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer. I really think working with political parties is going to be a two-way thing. It's not going to be a one-way thing. for PDP to be able to work with one. I think this question would, I think, be much more fairer if it was asked to both the parties. Yeah. At this stage, we're not considering any form of coalition. The issue of coalition may only arise after the elections, after the results, as you understand. And the PDP would, at that point in time, consider that. But any coalition that the PDP will enter into will be based on policy and not simply our desire to be in government. Because we believe that if we are going to go into any government, we would have to deliver to the people what we've put in this manifesto to the people. That's going to be the primary issue for PDP
Can you tick off,
in any coalition.
Can you tick off some names for me? Who can you work with? Which party can the PDP work with? Can
Well, we haven't actually considered any coalition here, to be honest. So the issue of working with
in principle, Mr.
principle, I don't know. In principle, we could work. I don't know. Yeah. I'd have to actually consider discussing this with my party, my deputy, and the other people in the party. So I'm not. Understand one thing. The PDP does not only fight for democracy, it practices democracy. Right, so any decision on coalition will be made in consultation with my national executives of the party. So it will not be solely a decision that Felix Anthony as leader makes.
Most of the manifestos, leaving Fiji First aside, are pretty identical. Your manifesto, the NFP manifesto, Fiji Labour Party manifesto, and most part of SODELPA manifesto are identical. Now, I just want to ask something about the military. I know it's something that has been in your mind for quite a while, since the 2006 takeover. Do you think the military, you're talking about, in your manifesto, you say that PDP will enhance Fiji's military forces capacity through professional training to provide effective international peacekeeping support from the United Nations. What do you think is the role of the military after the elections?
Well, first of all, I disagree again, Nemani, that all our policies are identical. We were the first party to launch the manifesto. I don't believe NFP has got anything on the military in their manifesto. And similarly, I'm not quite sure about the FLP. They've just launched their manifesto. But let me say that our primary concern here is that we need to professionalize the military. The military's role is to ensure the security of Fiji, primarily. Yeah.
Even though the military has been responsible for what has happened since 1987?
Well, yes, I don't think there's any doubt about that, but that does not mean that, are you suggesting that we should do away with the military?
No, I want to hear from you.
No, we're not.
You were saying it, not me.
Yeah. But that appears to be the suggestion. We're saying that we need to professionalize the military so that they do not repeat the mistakes of the past. We need a professional military that serves the people, and not the other way around, where the people serve the military. No.
Very quickly, just a very quick question. Yes or no? Do you believe Fiji's military is too large? Yes or no?
Yes, we believe it is too large. Not only that, but I also believe that it takes away the limited resources that we have that can really be targeted to the poor in our society, the underprivileged in our society, our healthcare, our social welfare. All this need much needed funds.
Does your policy on the military include a right sizing? It does not say anything as such in
No, it does not say anything on that, but at this stage we're not considering that at all.
Right, your party is promoting a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. What purpose would that serve?
That serves to heal. Look, we've had people being hurt in this coup here. We've had people who have died. We have people who have been beaten up, taken to the camp. We've had people who have been jailed, and I talk from experience because I've been through it. Yeah? And we have people who have been intimidated over the last 7.5 years. We believe we need to put a closure to this. The hurt and pain that people have suffered in this period cannot be ignored as if it's going to go away. We need to put a closure to this. One is that we reconcile the people, because if Fiji needs to move forward, we need some form of reconciliation here. We need one nation, we need one people to take the country forward. What we also want to make sure is that the purpose of this is that we do not repeat these mistakes in the future again.
With that, don't you think it'll open up old wounds as the country is striving to move forward and from the past?
I don't believe it'll open up old wounds. It will be a painful process, as we've seen in South Africa, but it is essential that we have this reconciliation to put a closure to the hurt and pain that people have suffered over the last 7.5 years. We cannot ignore that. And of course, this Prime Minister tells the people of this country that it should be judged on its track record. Well, that is part of its track record that we need to address.
Are you out to beat Fiji first, or are you out to form government?
Well, we're out to form government here. You know, I mean, I don't quite understand the question. Of course, we'll only form government if we beat Fiji first.
Do you see that as your only competition?
No, there are other parties there, out there that we see as our competitors.
What if there were to be a situation after elections that you have to work with Fiji first?
Well, we'll have to wait and see what situation arises. We will deal with it when we get there. I'm not willing to make any predictions.
Anthony, you were a member of the Labour Party, and then you left the Labour Party, and you now become the leader of PDP. Do you think, or I mean, would you be able to? How would you be able to win? To be able to secure votes, because what has happened now is you've taken with you all your support that you probably had to your new party, but is that enough to be able to get you to the finishing line?
Well, it's not only my support. I have a team with me. I have an entire team with me, and they all come from very impressive backgrounds, people who are well respected in the community, people who have worked in the community. And let me just say one thing. One of the things we have been very particular about when we chose our candidates was that we must make sure that they had a record of community service, right? So it's not only me as an individual. I believe the entire team will bring their support with them. And what we're seeing is our support growing every day as we talk to people. More and more people understand where we're coming from. And of course, as you know, that the PDP was also formed by the Fiji Trades Union Congress, the workers of this country.
Why did you leave the Labour Party?
Well, there are many issues in the Labour Party that we disagree with, but it is not my intention here to talk about the Labour Party. I don't believe it's going to serve any real purpose. I'd rather talk about the PDP.
Are you observing the developments within the FLP right now? Are you aware of what's going on? And can you enlighten us on whether that's one of the reasons that you left in the first place?
Well, I don't want to get into what's going on in any other party. I don't believe, for me as leader of the PDP, it's going to put any value on PDP, at all. I would rather look at what PDP is, what we need to do, and how we can take this country forward.
Is it true that you did not see eye to eye with Mr. Chaudhry?
Well, of course I didn't. Of course I didn't. There are many issues that we didn't see eye to eye, and over the years there were many issues that we didn't. And I'm one of those who speak my mind on issues if I agree or disagree.
Is that a quality of a leader? Is that quality of a leader?
That definitely is. That definitely is. I believe anyone in the party needs to be able to speak up on issues and articulate what they believe in.
As much as we'd like to carry on discussions, we've unfortunately gone over time. We've gone way more than what we allocated. Right now, I'd like to thank everyone for coming in. Mr. Anthony, yourself, Mika Longa from Fiji TV and Nemani from the Fiji Sun. I think it's been very interesting discussions. And with that, we end this episode of For the Record. We will be back next Sunday. Remember, if you want to catch a recording of tonight's show, we load all our shows, the entirety of it, on our website, www.fbc.com.fj. Good evening to you, our viewers, and gentlemen, once again, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.